8 servings, 1 pound of ground pork, 1 pot on the single burner. I'm going to show you the whole process today, but do not drain the fat after the ground pork is browned. Do that once and you have thrown away the entire flavor base of the dish. Every ingredient that goes in after it depends on what stays in that pan. What to do instead is coming. 450 grams of ground pork. Use a minimum of 20% fat content. Lean ground pork does not produce enough rendered fat to carry the flavor into the rice. The dish finishes dry and flat. The fat is not incidental here. It is the entire mechanism of the recipe. Break the ground pork apart into small, even pieces before it goes near the heat. Not large clumps, not a single mass. Small and loose throughout. Even pieces brown at the same rate. A large clump browns on the outside while the center steams, and the meat inside never develops any color or flavor. Break it apart in the bowl before it touches the pan. 1 large red onion, finely chopped, into a glass bowl and set aside. 2 carrots, grated and diced, set aside with the onion. Both are going in together later, and having them ready before the pork goes in means nothing sits waiting while the fat cools in the pan. 2 tablespoons of butter or rendered fat into a large skillet or Dutch oven over medium-high heat. Let it melt and begin to shimmer before anything goes in. Test the heat by dropping a small piece of ground pork into the pan. If it sizzles immediately and holds its position without sliding, the pan is ready. If it sits quietly, wait another 30 seconds. A pan that is not hot enough when the pork lands will steam the meat rather than sear it. The fat never properly caramelizes and the flavor base never forms. Ground pork in. Spread it out across the full surface of the pan. Leave it alone. Do not stir, do not move it, do not press it down. Ground pork contains enough fat to caramelize fast under direct heat. Wait until the edges are dark golden before breaking it up further. That color is not decoration, it is flavor breaking down and dissolving into the fat below. Any meat broken up too early releases its moisture before the crust forms and the pan fills with steam instead of searing. Once the bottom is deeply colored, break the pork apart with a spoon and stir it through. Cook until browned all the way through with no pink remaining. Then pull back from the heat. Do not drain the fat. Leave everything in the pan. The fat sitting in that pan is loaded with caramelized meat residue. It is the flavor vehicle for every ingredient that follows. Drain it and you are left with separate ingredients in a clean pan. Leave it and everything that goes in after absorbs it. This is the step I warned you about at the start, and it is not a preference, it is the entire mechanism of the dish. The red onion in. The grated and diced carrots in. 1 cup of celery if available, all into the pan with the browned pork. Cook on medium heat for 5 to 7 minutes, stirring occasionally. The onion releases its moisture into the fat. That moisture lifts the caramelized residue off the bottom of the pan and dissolves it back into the dish. Concentrated flavor that would otherwise stay stuck to the surface and eventually burn. The red onion sweetens as it softens and adds a deeper color to the base than white onion produces. The carrots begin to sweeten as they soften. The celery adds a faint herbal note that sits in the background of every spoonful. Every bit of it transfers directly into the rice during the simmer that follows. Watch the onion as it cooks. It should turn soft and begin to color at the edges before the next step. Pale, undercooked onion added to the rice produces a sharp, raw flavor that never fully integrates through the simmer. Give it the full 5 to 7 minutes. 2 cups of uncooked white rice, straight into the pan. Stir it through the fat and meat juices until every grain is coated. Give it 60 seconds before any liquid goes in. Rice toasted briefly in fat before liquid is added develops a slightly nutty flavor and holds its shape through the simmer rather than going soft and sticky. 60 seconds, that is the entire step. Do not skip it and do not give it longer. Rice that toasts too long absorbs the fat unevenly and the grains cook at different rates, some firm and some blown out. 4 cups of water or broth into the pan. 1 400-gram can of diced tomatoes in. The tomatoes add acidity that cuts through the richness of the pork fat and give the broth a depth that plain water alone cannot produce. Salt, black pepper, 1 teaspoon of paprika. Season now before the lid goes on. Taste the liquid. It should be slightly over-seasoned at this stage. The rice absorbs a significant amount of salt during the simmer, and what tastes correct in the liquid will taste flat in the finished bowl. Stir everything thoroughly. Every grain of rice should be submerged in liquid and surrounded by the pork and vegetables. Run a spoon around the edges of the pan to make sure nothing is sitting dry against the sides. Bring to a gentle boil. Stir occasionally without the lid until the liquid begins to absorb into the rice. Then put the lid on and reduce to the lowest setting. Let it thicken until the rice is fully cooked and the liquid is absorbed. 20 to 25 minutes total from the point the lid goes on. While the pot works, did you know ground pork behaves completely differently when browned hard in a hot pan and left to carry its fat into the dish? Most people drain it without thinking. Drop it in the comments. Do you drain the fat or leave it in? At 20 minutes, press the back of a spoon lightly into the surface of the rice. Firm and dry with no pooled liquid visible means it is done. Still wet, give it 5 more minutes with the lid back on and check again. If the rice is done but a thin layer of liquid is still visible around the edges, tilt the pan slightly and let it run to one corner. Then press a piece of bread or paper towel against that corner to absorb it. Ladle it into a bowl. The rice has absorbed everything: the fat, the caramelized meat residue, the tomato, the paprika. Every grain is colored through. The ground pork has lost its pale, raw texture and taken on a deeper, richer flavor than anything it had when it came out of the packet. This is what browning in fat and a 20-minute simmer does to the cheapest cut of pork on the counter. The pork is not sitting on top of the dish. It is in every spoonful, spread into every grain. A thin layer of meat distributed through an entire pot of rice. That is how 1 pound fed 8 people and left them satisfied rather than still hungry. I take a spoonful straight from the pot. The rice is dense and savory. The pork fat runs through every grain. The paprika sits underneath everything else, warm and present without announcing itself. Nothing about this bowl tastes like it came from ingredients that cost almost nothing. That is what the fat did. That is what staying in the pan instead of going down the drain produced. To take this further, transfer the cooked casserole to a baking dish. Scatter breadcrumbs or shredded cheese across the top. Oven at 175 degrees Celsius, 350 Fahrenheit. 20 minutes until the top is golden and slightly crisp. The baked crust on top of tender rice makes a cheap meal feel substantial. A texture contrast that costs almost nothing extra and turns one pot into something that looks like it took considerably more effort than it did. Use stale breadcrumbs if you have them. Stale breadcrumbs toast more evenly than fresh and produce a crispier result without burning at the edges before the center colors. Cool it completely before storing. Never seal it warm. Trap steam accelerates spoilage. Portion into freezer bags. Freeze immediately after portioning. 3 to 4 days in the fridge. Frozen portions keep for 3 months. Reheat with a splash of water on low heat, lid on, until piping hot all the way through. The splash of water prevents the rice from drying out against the pan as it reheats. Without it, the bottom layer scorches before the center is warm. The leftovers are better the next day. The rice continues absorbing the fat and seasoning overnight. What was good straight from the pot is denser and more cohesive the following morning. Depression-era households understood this. A pot made in the evening fed the family at dinner and fed them again better the next day at lunch. The dish was never made for one meal. It was made to run. 1 pound of ground pork, 2 cups of rice, 8 servings, and better the next day than the first. Tell me in the comments, what forgotten recipe do you want me to bring back next?